Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to ProLine, the longest-running sports handicapping show in America. I'm John Cranton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Stott of Las Vegas Sports Services. We're going to take a look at the NBA Finals. Game one is in the bag, a 110-95 Spurs win. That was a lot closer than that. We got 3 to 6 more to go. We're going to go through take a look at game two, some betting trends, some totals, some prop bets, and even some best bets to look at. First, let's talk about what we have going on board with these Vegas pros. Jim Feist is off a 4-2 Thursday. His Inner Circle baseball releases 4-2 for the week. He had an Inner Circle bailout on the Pirates Tuesday, a winner, an early release Inner Circle play on Thursday. That was the Giants, an easy 6-1 laugher. And if you're looking for winning plays from Jim, you could play right through the July All-Star break from Jim for just $29. You can get the rest of the NBA Finals, NBA, and baseball right through July 15th. Just call 1-866-841-1655. Jeff Stott, you had the San Antonio Spurs in game one, a nice blowout cover, at least late in the game. And I looked at your winning record for baseball for this week. I see a lot of 2-1 days. 2-1 Sunday with the Mets, 2-1 Monday, 2-1 Wednesday. It's not about winning every single game, but certainly grinding out a profit, and LVSS continues to do that.
Yeah, and in June, of course, all we have is baseball, except for the NBA Finals, and this is where you want to take advantage of cash in with baseball. You get the rest of June plus the NBA for only $25, and when you sign up, you're going to get a high roller consensus play. That's a $100 value. You get that free as a bonus. So just call LVSS 1-866-575-8916. Get the rest of June baseball, NBA, plus that bonus consensus winner, all for a grand total of $25. 1-866-575-8916.
Okay, the NBA Finals, we got one game in the book, and it's an exciting series, a rematch from last year. Tim Duncan looking for title number 5, LeBron looking for 3 in a row. The Spurs are one of 18 teams to lose a Game 7 of the NBA Finals and then come back the next year. Of the previous 17 teams, 11 made it back to the Finals the next season. 5 went on to get the title, but it hasn't happened in a while. The last one was your Detroit Pistons. They lost the 88 Finals, but then won it all in 89. The home team for this series is 5-1 against the spread. And now, we have to make a note about the format change. It used to be 2-3-2 from 1985 up until 2013. And for this year, they're moving back to the old 2-2-1-1-1 format. It's certainly fairer. The team that gets the better regular season record should have be playing 2 of the last 3 games, at least on home. And the historical symmetry is kind of ironic because the last time we had that 2-2-1-1-1 format, it was 1984, and the announcers were talking about that series during Game 1, because Game 5 back in 84 was the famous Boston Garden sweatshop game, 98 degrees, a picture of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar sucking oxygen, and it was a close first half, but in the second half, the visitors wilted, and the Heat certainly was blamed. It was a very unusual game, and I talked to a Laker fan years later, and he told me that he thought that Red Auerbach had turned the air conditioning off to give an advantage, and I told him, the Garden was built back in the 20s. There was no air conditioning to shut off, so I can assure Laker fans, Jeff, that there was no conspiracy in San Antonio or back in 84.
Yeah, back in 1984, I was living in L.A. I went to games 4 and 6 of that series. And in that Game 5 with no air conditioning, the Lakers had no chance. So they were out of it by the first quarter. They were gasping for air, and it turned out the Celtics won that series in 7 games. Game 7 was a great game. The Celtics favored by about 1.5, 2 points, and Lakers made a turnover in the last minute, and they lost the game in Game 7. Of course, next year the Lakers got revenge and won in 1985. But last night I had the Spurs. Of course, I knew that LeBron would get crayons with the air conditioning being off. Of course, no, I didn't know that. I'm just kidding. But I mean, it was a win is a win. Obviously, the Spurs got a big break there with LeBron going down, and with the Heat. But it's still a win. And going into Game 2, we have a lot of things going on. We'll talk about that later, John.
Yeah, I was living in not too far from Boston on the night of that Game 5 where it was hot. And that summer of 84, it just happened to be extremely hot and muggy in the Northeast. It was an unusual summer for about 2 months. And Game 5 of the NBA Finals happened to be played on that night. So, there was no conspiracy. I was reading some of the Miami papers, and they were, complaining about how could this happen. It's an embarrassment for the NBA. But, stuff like that does happen. I mean, we see NFL playoff games where great passing offenses have to play in cold, windy weather or snow.
Or fog.
Fog sometimes.
The Chicago Bears
correct.
Back in the 80s.
At the NHL Stanley Cup, we had a couple of games where the lights went out back in '88 and more recently. And then just 2 years ago, the Super Bowl, too, had an unusual thing where the lights go out. So you really just have to adjust. And inconveniences like that certainly affect both teams. All right, let's talk a little bit about the money movement. For game number 2 coming up Sunday, the Spurs opened 3.5 and now up to 4.5 as we're doing this. The total went from 200 down to 198.5. And what we saw, Jeff, in the first game was the Spurs opened 3.5, and boy, did it climb to 4, 4.5, and then to 5 for game 1. And I guess the public was right on that one.
And the public, but the wise guys too. Just about everybody was betting on the Spurs in game 1. The line went from 3.5 up to 5. I think the two main reasons was, of course, we had revenge from last year. And also they think that the Spurs had a much tougher road. They had to beat Dallas and Portland, Oklahoma City, where the Heat had to beat supposedly easier opponents in the Eastern Conference. So those are the two main reasons, and I guess the wise guys plus the public were all over the Spurs in game 1, John.
Well, they did get the money in game 1. Everybody did. And let's take a look at game 2 coming up on Sunday. It's, two talented teams, two star-studded lineups. So right now the favorite is 7-2 against the spread when these teams meet. And game 1 was actually a tight game despite the 15-point blowout win by the Spurs. It was a strange game, of course, with that sweats box. And really, Jeff, when you analyze it, you can probably make an argument for both teams after that one.
Yeah, well, first of all, for Miami, we always had the zigzag theory, which is bet on the team that lost the previous game. And now, when something like this, with a major factor for the team losing was something that's not going to happen in game 2, I assume we don't have the air conditioning fixed. The zigzag theory will probably stand out even more for the Spurs. And also, the Spurs shot nearly 59% in game 1. You don't expect them to do that again. And especially if they shot 52% from a three-point line. It was just a fantastic shooting game for the Spurs. And you have to question whether they do that 2 games in a row. And so that's the case for the Heat. As far as for the Spurs, they're still playing at home, and they've still got revenge from last year. They don't want to go back to Miami without the home court advantage. So both ways you look at this game, but right now I would give the edge to the Heat at this point, John.
Well, I'm going to flip it around and give a little bit of edge to San Antonio because there were things in game 1 that impressed me, and it wasn't so much the starters, it was the bench that was really stood out for San Antonio. First of all, Boris Diaw. This guy ended up with 10 rebounds. He was very creative with his playmaking. His hustle was exceptional. Only had 2 points, but I thought he was a huge factor, and he was one of 2 double-digit guys in rebounding on the Spurs. I think that's going to be a problem for Miami for much of the series. I like Splitter and Duncan, a couple of 6'11" and 7-foot guys. This is a Miami team was 30th in the NBA in rebounding. They were outscored 48-36 in the paint. That's a trend that I can see continuing. I don't see the Spurs being as sloppy, but I do see them controlling the paint, getting some high percentage shots up front. That's going to be something that Miami is going to have to figure out a way to contend with. And another one is Danny Green. I mean, if you just look at the final box score in Green for game 1, 13 points, 3 of 7 from long range. That's his game. So he was an okay contributor, but that doesn't tell the whole story. He started 0 for 5 for 3 quarters. He didn't do anything. And then, boy, did he get hot, hitting 3 in a row, 8 quick points that put them from being behind to up. And I thought he was just a huge spark plug, one of many very good role players that the Spurs have off the bench that they can count on in these big games. And he was outstanding. So the starters and the star players can kind of balance each other out, but the role players can play significant roles. And I really like what San Antonio has with the role-playing capability. No, they're not going to shoot 59% again, but they have a pretty good balance and the way to attack Miami. And the rebounding battle ended up being 39-29. That's something I think San Antonio is going to be able to continue. One other way that I'm looking at this game, first of all, the Spurs, keep in mind they're 8-0 against the spread at home. They've been really hot. And against the East, they have a sizzling 52-24-1 spread run. When they go on the road at Miami for games 3 and 4, they're 2-7 against the spread on the road. The other way to look at it is the total. Miami's the type of team that they can play any style. You want to play a slow defensive style like we saw against Indiana at times, they're fine, but they can get out and run too. We saw that in the first game. Spurs are all about running and utilizing that depth. I think it's going to be a higher scoring series. Miami in the NBA Finals is now 5-1 over the total. When they play the Western Conference, they're 6-2 over the total, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that trend continue. All right, if you're looking for plays from Mr. Vegas, he has a special for the rest of the month. You can get baseball and June from Mr. Vegas for $20 at 1-866-896-1627. Jeff, you had a winner with the Spurs in Game 1. People can get aboard baseball and NBA for the rest of the month from you as well.
Right. The rest of June, baseball plus the NBA Finals, $25. When you sign up, you get a free high roller consensus play. That's going to be a free bonus. It's a $100 value. Just call LBSS 1-866-575-8916. That's 1-866-575-8916. Grand total of $25. The rest of June, baseball and NBA.
All right, Jim Feist also had that Spurs in Game 1. In the NHL, he did lose the opening game of the Stanley Cup Finals. Took a shot with New Jersey, a big underdog at plus 150. Not bad for a team that goes into overtime. Still, that's part of a 7-3-2 NHL run for Jim. He's been terrific with baseball this week, including the rare high-end Diamond Elite plays. Doesn't give these out very often, but he had 2 in the last 10 days. He's 5-1, 80% on the season. Last Saturday, he had his Diamond Elite Dog Game of the Year. That was the Orioles. Won easily 4-1. This Wednesday, he had the San Francisco Giants. They won 5-1. So if you want to get on board with Jim, right through the All-Star break in July, baseball, plus the rest of the NBA Finals, you can call 1-866-841-1655. Get on board for $29 with the Red Horse Vegas Handicap, and you get all sports. All right, there's money to be made in all of these sports. If you want to win, take advantage with these Vegas pros, everyone. Enjoy the games, and we'll see you next week with another edition of ProLine direct from Las Vegas.